Over the years, we've had some interesting evenings here with freezing weather and rain and all kinds of problems, but tonight it's beautiful. And it's great to have a time when it's beautiful inside and outside, and how could you possibly pick a better place than this tonight to have a gala? This place has once again been voted as the Reader's Choice Award by the Convention South Media Group. So this is 5 years in a row. That's amazing. Nobody does that. So to Pam and her whole team and to the city of Havelock, congratulations. Well done. Some of you are probably trying to figure out exactly what the title meant tonight. And we sort of played the last couple of times with giving you a title that didn't really tell you everything, but got to keep them separated. You'll understand what that really stands for in a while, but I'm not going to tell you yet. But all of you are here tonight because you like aviation history. You like having the troops and the sailors around, and you like what we're doing with kids. And that's really our goal, is to try and do that. We've had some great work and some great help, and we have really good help for this particular night, and that is our title sponsors. And once again, Carolina East Health System, WCTI Channel 12, and Susan Broughton and her husband are folks that are excited, and really want to make sure this is special. We have a lot of special guests tonight, and I'm going to list them, so please don't applaud when I read their names. And it's amazing how many are here. North Carolina Senator Bob Brinson, North Carolina Representative Steve Tyson, the CEO of Cherry Point, Colonel Tim Drieslein, the XO of the Fleet Readiness Center East, Colonel Chris McDonald, the Executive Director of FRC East, David Rose, the Mayor of Havelock, of course, Mayor Will Lewis, Sergeant Major Nikki Bautista, from the Senior Enlisted Leader from Cherry Point, Craven County Commissioner Sherry Hunt, Carteret County Commissioner Mary Ann Waldrop, Havelock Mayor Pro Tem Brenda Wilson, Havelock Commissioner Danny Walsh, Havelock Commissioner Tyrone Canty, Havelock Commissioner Mark Larkin, Craven County Sheriff Asa Buck, Interim Havelock City Manager Randy Martin, the Havelock Assistant City Manager Cindy Morgan, Craven Community College Associate Dean of Havelock Campus, Cameron Kishel, and he's covering the time at Havelock after our last one went up to a bigger job in another state or another city, and we've never forgiven her yet, but that's the way life is. And then we have some folks from the Center for Naval Aviation Technical Training. Major Gurik is here tonight. His CEO is in the Philippines, so he couldn't get back just for this, but he'll be back next year. And we have the new Single Marine Program presidential candidate, Felix Granados. Are you here, Felix? Stand up. Okay, he's the one that we're going to nail every time we need Marines. And tonight, we have 32 of our single Marines here sitting at your table. So thank you very much. Well done. So we have sponsors, ECAF members, history buffs, media, community friends, Marines, sailors, students. We even have Charles Lindbergh in the back, dressed like Tim Clark. If you fall into one of those groups or even remotely close to that, please stand up for me. And the ones I read as the special guests, stand up for me. Drieslein, get off of your rear end there, get up. Okay, now stay up for a second. Don't be sitting down yet. So if you're not one of the names I called or closely associated with them, please stand up. That's everybody. Because you can't have a meeting in this building unless you say the Pledge of Allegiance. And I always like to think about the Pledge of Allegiance before we do this. And this is an interesting time. If you think back just a little bit, about 81 years ago yesterday, the Marines went across the beach in Iwo Jima. Pretty amazing stuff. The bloodiest battle they had in World War II, with about 6,821 folks giving their lives. Pretty amazing. And the 23rd, 3 days from now, is when they raise the flag up on Mount Suribachi, and that's always a special one. And I had a really neat time. About 3 weeks ago, I met one of the Iwo Jima veterans. There aren't many still alive. And this guy was only on Bougainville, Guadalcanal, Guam, and then Iwo Jima, where he was wounded for the second time. I mean, real character. So what do you think he'd be doing now? He's 100 years old, he drives his own car, and he volunteers as a tour guide on the USS North Carolina in Wilmington. So, old soldiers never die. It's pretty neat stuff. He's been there for a long, long time. And there's something else we should remember, and that is Michael J. Smith Airport. And who was Michael J. Smith? He was a Navy captain, a local boy, flew in World War II, and then got out and went in and became an astronaut, and he perished in the Challenger thing. So lots of things to remember and lots of things to think about and say, if it weren't for those folks, we wouldn't be saluting our flag today. So now, please join me as we salute our flag with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Hoorah! And now it's my pleasure to introduce, not that he needs an introduction, but Major Will Lewis, the mayor of Havelock, to welcome you officially to this fine celebration tonight.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to our award-winning Tourist and Event Center. Thank you for coming out. You know, you look around Eastern North Carolina, it really is a shining example of opportunity in STEM. And any community you go to, you'll find a college that offers STEM, like our Havelock campus, where NC State has a mechanical engineering and electrical engineering program and an institute for aeronautical technology from our community college. Or the Volt Center in New Bern, or the robotics program up there. And then probably in any other community you might find summer camps ranging all different ages that give kids access to STEM. But I bet you in no location in North Carolina would you find all of that in one location, in Havelock and Craven County and Carteret County. Or would you also find on top of that an FRC East that has a fab lab that goes out to see kids and put their hands on STEM, or our brand new addition to the inventory of STEM, which is Starbase aboard Cherry Point, that's given fifth graders access to STEM. And when you put all that together, I always say, sitting in this room, I love this event for one reason. I feel like the ECAF was the cornerstone, a foundation stone of that happening. Because I remember when FRC came to ECAF over a decade ago and said, we got to reach kids in STEM sooner. High school's not early enough, middle school's not early enough. And the ECAF said, challenge accepted, and started the first 4th, 5th, and 6th rising 4th, 5th, and 6th grade STEM summer camps in all of Eastern North Carolina. And from that, we've grown into an entire ecosystem of STEM opportunity. And looking around at the Gala every year, you guys support the camp, and the money that we make here tonight helps build that vision further and further and further into the future. And when I go to other communities and they say, how do you get there? I remind them it takes a long time and a lot of effort, but somebody's got to start it. And so thank you to all of you for helping start that and for being a part of its continuation in the future. Hope y'all have a great night.
I don't have anything left to say. He said it all and did it very well, as he always does. But he's right. It has been great, and it's only great because of the folks out here that volunteer and make things happen. And all of you do that for us. We have a couple opportunities if you wish to help even more. When you came in tonight, you probably saw a lady sitting out there who was willing to take your money to become a member of ECAP. $50 for a family for a year. It's incredible. And there's also going to be some raffle drawings, and the raffle, we're going to do this at the end of the night tonight, but $5 a ticket or 5 for $20, and you're going to a chance to get a can, kind of made out of a can, an airplane, a Harrier laser engraved cutting board donated by Greg Saban, 2 rounds or a round of golf for 2 at Carolina Colors that Guy Nelson has arranged for us, an ECAP tumbler, and a scenic airplane ride for 2 that Adam Persky's doing. And right now would be a great time to get that because look at all this freeway stuff that's going on. Wouldn't it be fun to drive down and see what they're really doing? See how many guys are sleeping, how many guys are working, all that kind of stuff, and you can keep track of it, but it would be really great. So we'll name the lucky winners at the end of the night. Now let's show that promotional video, if you would, please.
Eastern Carolina is home to over 100 years of aviation history. From the early 1900s, with Wilbur and Orville Wright taking flight at Kitty Hawk, to the turn of the century with our beloved Pedro, to the dawn of a new era with the next generation F-35 Joint Strike Fighters. Our community supports and promotes this heritage, and Eastern Carolina Aviation Heritage Foundation wants to ensure the tradition continues for generations to come. Join us as we host a series of events for people of all ages. Experience the heritage, community, and patriotism we share with MCAS Cherry Point and make marine aviation history come alive. Our partnership between the military and civilian communities is unlike any other, and we count on you for your support. Become a member today to be a part of the amazing journey.
Pete, now let's run that little short video on what our summer camp looked like last year, please.
LCROA.
This is LC.
Call out actual launcher settings.
Actual launcher settings are at 80.4, elevation 80.4.
Copy, check 186.
PLC check 184, 185, 188, 189.
DCS check 187.
I'm going to verify no change in TM or transmitter.
Mission control, we have liftoff.
ATM check 192, no change in green. No change in PLC check 191. PM M&O, no change on radar or TM. Check 190, 194.
Okay, Pete, back to the slides, please. So I suspect most of you would like to know what else we did besides just the camp. Next one. We had a really neat gala last year, and one of our own board members, Guy Nelson, he is a board member in ECAF, so I have to acknowledge that. He's an Aviate pilot. He's an acknowledged expert on unmanned aerial systems and the president and CEO of Atalo. And he gave us a really fascinating look on the future of unmanned aerial systems and what they could do, which is great. Next up. In our STEM camp, I just showed you the film on a little bit of that, but it's a curriculum designed for rising 4th through 6th graders, and we use this room right here. We divide it into 5 big sections. Each section has a group of 10 students. They have 1 school teacher, 1 or 2 engineers from the FRC East, and 1 or 2 volunteers, either from the NC State's classes across the street or from being a high school kid in the area, but they come in and work, so you got that many adults, 10 kids, and they stay together the whole time. And we just cordon off the area into 5 sections, and it works out really nicely. And the kids don't spend a lot of time just sitting around, although they're all kind of sitting and standing there, but that's the class. 50 kids. Okay, next up, please. Oh, by the way, we have a class coming this summer, of course, and it'll be 50 students, campers, and last year we had 87 applicants. So if you have a child or a grandchild you want to get in there, don't tinker around. I mean, get in and get on the website, and it'll be on the piece of paper on your desk there, and sign up and get them going. Okay, next up, please. Okay, this was the theme, the mission Liftoff Defying Gravity, and as you can see, there's an awful lot of stuff going on, and the kids just keep on going. But that's the camp this year coming up, the 20th and 24th of July, 20th through 24th July, and it really is a good camp, and we've already got a lot of people signing up. So please do that if you're at all interested. Okay, next one, please. We do a fly-in every year. And it's not, I mean, we call it a fly-in. You don't really fly. Well, probably a few people do, but you don't really fly. And it's fun. And we have a lot of folks that come in and bring their wares to show the kids, so the kids get to try things out. Go to the next one, if you would, Pete. If you look in that lower right corner, those are all the different organizations that came out with something that the kids could try out or play with, and you probably can't read it back there, but it's boy, it is tiny, isn't it? Cherry Point EOD, they bring their robot out, so the kids actually get to drive the robot, and every so often you'll see one of them control the robot over and take the cup out of Donnie Cox's hand and hand it to somebody else and go back, and their eyes are going, how'd you do that? You do that by going to school, by learning some systems, by working real hard, and it works out, and it's a lot of fun. Mag 14 brings flight gear every year, and we put the kids up by the F4 on a ladder and get them dressed up and then take a picture, and by the time they leave, the picture's developed, and we hand it to them so they can take it home. So there's just all kinds of, we even had an alpaca this year. I mean, we cover everything we can to let kids get excited about education, how things work, and so that was an exciting one. Next up, Pete. And then in the fall, we do something that's a little unusual, and that is we invite all of our members to come in, and the teachers and our sponsors, and they get to do what the kids did during summer camp, only they only have about an hour to do it in. So they had to build their stomp rockets, design them and build them, and then measure to see how far they went. And who was the winner there, Colonel McDonald? Yeah, FRC East, Colonel McDonald was the winner. He shot from the wall up here and he hit the wall over the door in the very back there with his stomp rocket. But he has big shoes, so it wasn't really fair. But it was a great night, and they have fun. And I think we had 6 restaurants this year that bring in food. So you can sit there and if you wish to sip a beer or not, but you can eat some food, try out some of these things, see what the kids do, have to do it yourself, and realize that these kids are a little smarter than I thought. Or maybe we're slipping a bit. I don't know which it is, but it's fun stuff. Okay, next up, please. These are all the camps, and it's an interesting thing. We do our camp, Rising 4th through 6th. Then there's a middle school camp, there's a high school camp, there's all kinds of different camps, and our camp is right here. The ones that the Craven Community College does are across the street on the Havelock campus, and we've gotten together, and the mayor mentioned it, but we try to get kids started. And one of the goals is get kids excited, the ones who live here, because they're the ones who want to live here the rest of their lives. So if we can get them started in an elementary school level, and they go on to a middle school, onto a high school camp, walk right across the campus over there and sit down with NC State and become an engineer, or go over to the IAT side and become an A&P licensed, someone who can work, and then walk through the gate across the way and you work at FRC or at the air station, and we've got them. And we don't have people who come down here moving in and saying, yeah, but where's the mall, and where's the theater, and where are all the things I got when I lived in New York? We don't care. We want people who are here, who are excited, and they like living here, so we just want to take advantage of that opportunity. So that's what we do. So it works out really well, and I appreciate the good hard work with the community college and NC State and the FRC and the air station. They all pitch in and do a great job. Next up, please. Okay, schedule for 2026. You see, we don't have a date yet for the fall event because we have to check the football schedule when that comes out. Because there are a lot of things you don't do, and one of them is you don't schedule on the night of a football game in Havelock. I mean, you just don't do that. So those are some events that are coming up, and we'll send out to all the members. We send an email out that will have all these dates on there again. Okay, next up, please. We have an ACES honor roll, and that's a chance. We have a hard copy of it up here, but it's a chance for people who have had a loved one or a good friend who passed on, and they can put their name in memory. Or next one up, please. Okay, they can do it in honor. So if somebody's still alive, but you want to just say they're doing something okay, so I'd like to honor them, you can do that. Events like this don't happen without sponsors. So let's look at the sponsors and see what they've got there. That's the title sponsors: Carolina East, WCTI, and Susan and her husband. Okay, next up. All right, now we have some gold sponsors there, and you can see those as well as I can, but it's City of Havelock, Interbanks Media, The Flame, and Naval Systems, Inc., NSI. Next slide, please. Okay, silver sponsors: Chevy of New Bern, Harold H. Bate Foundation, Richard Hazlett, Legacy Private Client Services. And the next one, bronze ones, Stonebridge Dental and Warden Smith, PA. And then we've got 2 full pages of table sponsors. And if you're a guest here tonight, look on your table, it'll tell you who your sponsor was. And it's incredible, and it's because of all these sponsors that we can do this, and we can raise money, and we can keep doing our fly-in where we feed the kids for free. I mean, they just come in. Usually we get 350 to 400 kids, sometimes a little more, and their families, and it's all ages, and they get to go out and try out all those things that I talked about, and just walk around here and outside, and even pet an alpaca. I mean, but everything counts. They need to understand what makes this area work. So agriculture, in addition to aviation, in addition to fixing machines and keeping them in the sky, in addition to tandem lock, places that make heavy equipment, or FRC that fixes anything that flies, and other things too, occasionally. So please remember the sponsors and use them if you want. And if one of them doesn't have it, then you probably don't really need it anyway. So don't worry about it. I'd like to introduce our ECAF board. And these are all volunteers and they all work hard. So when I call your name, would you please stand up? Ray Dunn, Guy Nelson, Dr. Bill Fortney, Jimmy Green's not here tonight because his wife had an operation, Ben Hancock, Ed Hughes, Mayor Lewis, Brenda Wilson, David Rose, Adam Persky, Richard Hazlett, Barry Fetzer, Rhonda Murray, and Mary Beth Fennell. All of them are volunteering, doing some neat things, and they put up with all the crazy stuff we try to do, and they're always there volunteering and doing the work hard. So thank you all very much. And I've got to focus a little bit on Rich. Rich, where are you? Hazlett? Stand up. Stand up. He is also, yeah, I know he is. Yeah. As short as he is, he can still reach the plane, but he is the curator for Havelock, and he keeps all the airplanes outside, all of these nice displays in the counters. That's Rich's work, and Rich, thank you. You do a fine job. And then there's the folks that aren't members of the board, but they really do incredible work. Pam Holder and her whole team at the Tourist Event Center here. Her right arm is Diana Vaccarello, and then on the staff, Ushima Turner, Jeff Lowe, Karen Swanner, Joe Hennessy, Cherie Brody, Letitia Thierry, Jessica McManus, and Joe DeScheidner. This place is always clean. It's always nice. It's always welcoming. No matter what a person plans, whether it's just they want to use the boardroom for a half hour or they want to do something like this, they just jump to and they make it work. So thanks to the staff. Good job. And the city of Havelock also had volunteers just for this. J.C. McVicker, Tiffany Baker, Sharon Reynolds, Carolyn Clements, Deborah Couch, Diana Vaccarella, and then the graphic designer was done by Brett King. We had a couple of photographers, we got them here tonight, Jeremy LeRae and Greta Meadows. And the video, even though Todd Jakiviak couldn't be here, he set it up so Barry can sit in the back there and flick a switch and turn it on and off, and that's challenging for him, but he can do it. And we've got some other volunteers, Charlotte Gulia, and this mural right here, Mary Beth Beasley, Jim Beasley's daughter, who works with the Center of Performing Arts, loaned that to us for the night, and it's beautiful. And you can see they've got it tied up because it weighs about 1,000 pounds, but it's really neat. And then Jenna and Mike Lanford take pictures, volunteer, just get involved in everything. And of course, on the tube over there is Pete Benson. He does the audio and the visual. So we've been busy. We're going to get busier. And I didn't mention all the small things, the people just coming in for a visit or a national night out where we go over and have a booth and talk to kids and show them how to fix airplanes and take them things. So it's just plain old fun. And we are fortunate to have the folks who are willing to do it. We're gearing up for our free event for the STEM now, and that's going to be great again.
And for Colonel Driesland for allowing me to come here and speak, and for General Broughton for inviting me to come, and for Guy Nelson for his friendship and talking me into doing this thing. So thank you, everyone. And this is going to be a presentation about air traffic control. So I want to start out. Keep them separated. You may have heard the music, you may not have. It's an old song from the late 90s about keeping two young lovers separated. In this case, we're going to talk about keeping airplanes separated because that's what the job of an air traffic controller really is. But tonight, we're going to go into detail into that because if you've ever just gotten on a plane and flown, as Tom said, then you kind of, maybe that's all in the dark to you. And actually, I thought being an air traffic controller was this experience or this job that people really understood. It was like when my kids tell their friends that their dad's an air traffic controller, they knew what they were talking about. And then I came to the high school STEM lab here, and I started talking to the high school students, and probably 9 out of 10 of them thought that I literally had wands in my hand and was marshaling airplanes. And so I realized that maybe people don't actually know what air traffic control is. So if you see this guy on the slide, that's not an air traffic controller. Now, that's a very important job. It's really important to marshal aircraft in and out of the gates. But we don't have wands, and we don't work out on the flight line as these guys do. Thank goodness we have air conditioning and heat where we work. But I thought it was important to really impact the next generation and let them know that there are so many different career opportunities in aviation, and air traffic control is certainly one of them. And if you've seen the news at all lately, you probably understand that. We're going to talk about that a little bit later, because air traffic control is one of those jobs where you probably don't hear about it until you don't want to hear about it. And so we're going to talk about that too. But I want you guys to kind of understand the things that are going on in the background, because aviation is such a broad field. I'm sure here represented, we have people that work on airplanes in every different scenario, from avionics to the engines of the aircraft, to the airframe of the aircraft. We have pilots here, obviously. We have people that fly unmanned aerial systems, and we have air traffic controllers. So it's important that we all kind of understand what each other do, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So first of all, we don't have glow sticks, but we do help tell aircraft where to go. So here's an actual picture of where we work. Of course, we had to work the Blue Angels into this picture to make it look great. No, you cannot get on the tower when there's an air show. Sorry, those seats are all taken. But air traffic controllers work in the air traffic control tower, and they also work in the radar facility. And we have both at Cherry Point. And so you see both of those things represented here. You have Marine air traffic controllers and civilian air traffic controllers working in both areas. And so that's a little bit of what we're going to talk about tonight. But before we get into Cherry Point, I want to kind of cover what air traffic control is like in general. So if you get on a flight at Newbern, or you get on a flight in Raleigh or in Charlotte, what happens to that flight between when you are sitting there waiting for, row 1, row 2, row 3 to get on the airplane, and what actually happens when you take off, what happens when you're in the air, and what happens when you land, because it is a very intricate system that gets the busiest airspace in the world, and the U.S. is the busiest airspace in the world, how that works on a daily basis. So we're going to talk about that a little bit to kind of get us started. So what does that look like? So we talked a little bit about a long time ago. Aircraft used to fly across the country with very little control. They were kind of out there in the dark. In fact, back in the day in Cherry Point, you actually had guys, air traffic controllers, believe it or not, laying out beside the runways telling aircraft whether their gear was down or not. I would not want that job, but we had people doing that. You don't have that anymore. We have a pretty intricate system. So if you go to Newbern, for example, and you're taking a flight, they call your number, you're ready to get on the airplane, they're going to call the tower, and the tower at Newbern is going to call the approach control at Cherry Point. Many people may not know that. So we don't just do military air traffic control at Cherry Point. We do civilian air traffic control as well. In fact, a lot of our customers are civilian aircraft. And so they're going to call the tower, and then the tower is going to call us, and then we're going to have communication across the National Airspace System to make sure your plane, your American Airlines plane, your Breeze flight can leave from Newbern and get to where you're going. 9 times out of 10, that's Charlotte. If you're lucky, it's Orlando. Maybe it's Connecticut. But we're going to make sure that you can get where you're going on time and safely. And so that kind of starts your journey. So you're going to start that tower. You're going to take off from the airport. That tower is going to clear you for takeoff. And then you're going to be handed over to the approach control facility. If you're looking at the slide, you're going to see tower and then TRACON. That TRACON is the radar approach control facility. And that facility is going to take you out of New Bern. They're going to climb you up through the National Airspace System, make sure that you're not getting too close to any other airplanes or any military aviators that may be training in the area. And then they're going to move you on into the en route sector of air traffic control. And these are like highways in the sky. So basically, think of it as like you leave your house, you get on your street, and then you get onto dreaded Highway 70, right? Now, Highway 70's gotten a little bit more crowded lately. Interstate 42 is coming along, but it's not there yet. And so that project is getting you from the house onto your street and then onto the interstate system. And that en route air traffic control environment are those interstate systems in the sky. You're going to do that. They're going to take you from where you started across the country or across the world to where you're going. And then you're going to transition kind of the opposite way again. So you're going to go from the en route section down to a terminal radar facility that's going to work that airplane into the airspace around that control tower, wherever you happen to be going. And then you're going to get handed off to the tower. The tower is going to sequence you to the runway, and then they're going to clear you to land, and you're going to land on that runway. So in that, there's a lot of different intricacies. So there's weather that we have to take into account. There are other flights, obviously, that we have to take into account. And on top of that, there is the sequencing into the airport that you're going to, and there are different ways to get into that airport. So the pilot of that airplane may be using GPS, so global positioning systems. That's a satellite-based system. There are also ground systems that are able to help aircraft navigate, and we actually have wonderful technicians even on Cherry Point that help us maintain those systems. And so there's so many different things that go on. There's communications that are going to every different facility along the way to make sure your flight is safe, to make sure you're steered around weather, to make sure you get to your gate and get to your gate on time. And so it is an intricate system, and it's something that maybe the public doesn't know about. So hopefully it's a fun thing for you to learn about tonight. So you get to the airport. You're stressed. Do you have your passport? Do you not have your passport? Are you in that scene from Home Alone where you are just running through the airport trying to get to your gate? I've been there. I know. Somehow my wife and I got to LAX with 30 minutes before our flight. Never get to LAX with 30 minutes before your flight. That's the worst case scenario, right? But how do air traffic controllers integrate with that system? Probably if you're the flying public, this is what you hear. Air traffic control has us on a gate hold, and you're like, those doggone air traffic controllers, right? They're not letting us take off. I promise you, it's not us. We are not saying you can't take off. What we are saying is there's traffic maybe going to the place you're going or at the place you are, or there's weather that's precluding a safe takeoff, or there's too many aircraft trying to move in and out of that airport. So we're just making sure everybody can be sequenced safely. So just know if you're sitting on the tarmac, you're getting hot, the air conditioning isn't working great in the airplane. The reason for that is because we're trying to make sure you get to where you're going safely, and that is the job of every air traffic controller in the National Airspace System. So, unfortunately, when you hear about air traffic control, what do you hear about? You don't hear about the thousands of flights a day that safely take off and land in the National Airspace System, right? In fact, this is an aviation group, so hopefully you appreciate this. Aviation is the safest way to travel in the world. There we go. Come on. I like that. By far, you are much more likely to get into a car accident driving out of your street in your safe neighborhood in Eastern North Carolina than you are to get into an accident in an aircraft. But when that happens, it makes the news, right? And so the reason you probably learn about air traffic control is because of the news. And so we know that last year we had one of the worst aviation accidents in American history over the last couple of decades that happened at Reagan National Airport. And so a lot of people learned about air traffic control from that incident. But what I want everyone to know is that that doesn't speak on behalf of all of the air traffic controllers and the National Airspace System. That was an incident that happened because, we like to say in air traffic control, the Swiss cheese model just all lined up, right? Swiss cheese has a bunch of holes in it, and every hole kind of had to line up to make that incident happen. So you had a commuter jet, not very much different than the ones that come in and out of New Bern, that was coming into Reagan National. It changed runways very late in the procedure in that terminal airspace. And then you had a Army helicopter that was flying a little bit above where they should have been flying, and those two airplanes got too close together. Now the controller tried time and again, if you listen to the incident, to let those airplanes know what was going on. But the difficult thing is, national airspace is difficult to manage. I will tell you to put your worries at bay, that don't worry, you're not going to have any Marine Corps helicopters flying off the end of the runway at New Bern Airport. You'll be okay. They also don't fly off the end of the runway at Charlotte, so you'll be okay there as well. But the National Airspace System is set up to allow different entities to use that airspace. And so you have military that needs to do their training. Many of us were in the military or still are in the military, and we understand the value of training in airspace that oftentimes other users want to use. And so we had a Army Black Hawk helicopter that was training in that airspace. We had a commuter jet that was landing on a runway. And because of the way the airspace was set up, those two airplanes got too close together. And unfortunately, that's the way you normally hear about air traffic control. But I don't want you to leave here tonight with that being all you know about air traffic control, because the vast majority of what's happening every day goes unseen because it's supposed to. You're not supposed to know what's going on because we want you to get on your flight. We want you to get on with your Bermuda shorts, your Hawaiian shirt, you're going on vacation. You don't have to worry about what's going on. You can get on your flight, you can drink your gin and tonic and have a good time, and you can land at your destination stress-free. So please, I want everyone to know that the system is built to allow you to do that, and literally, statistically, 99.99999% of the time, that is what happens. So, how does that work? So it starts with you going to the gate. You get on the airplane, you get loaded up, they close the doors, everybody's trying to stuff their bags in the overhead compartment, right? And you sit down, you buckle in, they give you that safety video that nobody watches, and then you start taxiing out. There is going to be an air traffic controller that's on the frequency with the pilot, telling that pilot how to taxi, even in taxiing, how to taxi safely from the gate to your departure runway. Because there are other aircraft, there are other vehicles, there are other people on the ground moving around that are also moving in that same space. And so that air traffic controller is managing all those people on the ground to make sure you get to your departure runway safely so that you can take off and go on your flight. When you depart, your aircraft takes off. You're going to go from a ground controller. You've heard Major Tom to ground control, right? I'm not aging myself, right? Everybody knows that, Major Tom to ground control. You go from ground control over to a local controller or a tower controller that's going to clear that aircraft for takeoff. So his job is to make sure the runway environment is safe for the aircraft to depart. And so he has to sequence you between aircraft that are landing on the runway and then you that are taking off on the runway. And so that's what he's going to do. Next, once you get into the air, we talked about the terminal environment. Going up, talk to the radar controller. So on departure, you're going to talk to a radar controller that's going to make sure that you're clear of other aircraft, put you on your routing toward your destination. And they're going to talk to you between 10,000 and up to about 23,000 feet. So from the surface, you're going to take off with a tower, you're going to go to a radar controller, and then they're going to talk to you for that next portion of your flight. That's that portion of your flight where you're just waiting to take the seatbelt off, right? You're waiting to turn on your phone. You're waiting to play Angry Birds or whatever thing you want to play on your phone that doesn't require the Wi-Fi because you have to pay for it on an American Airlines flight, right? That is the portion that the radar controller is getting you up and out of that terminal airspace. Along with that, they're making sure you don't encounter any weather that would disturb your flight. If you've flown, you've probably been on a flight that was a little bumpy. We want to keep you from getting bumped around. We don't want you to spill that gin and tonic on your wife, right? So, again, those controllers are going to route you around weather. We have real-time weather feeds on our scopes. We're going to route you around weather, change your routing. If you can get sped up, we're going to speed you up. Sometimes, unfortunately, it slows you down, but the name of the game is keeping you safe and keeping you comfortable in the air. And so we're going to do that as we get ready to hand you off to that en route facility. In the nation, this is a depiction of all of the different en route facilities in the nation. To put it in perspective for you here in Eastern North Carolina, your en route facility is actually up in Leesburg, Virginia. So Washington Center covers this airspace from, depending on the day, 23 to 50,000 feet and up, and they're going to take you on that highway in the sky. They're going to be bordered by places like Atlanta Center and New York Center. So you can see that there are really big, vast kind of swaths of airspace that those centers are going to take over. And you're going to go from one to the next as you navigate that highway in the sky. And those center controllers are all sitting at those centers taking care of thousands of flights an hour to make sure that everybody is safe as they go along their way. Then you're going to come back into your terminal facility. So wherever you're arriving into, you're going to see those arrival gates. Hopefully there's not a delay there. And you're going to land, and the whole system is going to work backwards. So you'll go from the en route control to the terminal radar control to the tower, and then you're going to get cleared to land. And then the tower is going to make sure you land safely, and they're going to taxi you to your gate. Now, how does that work at Cherry Point? Many of you, if you're sitting in this room and you were not a Marine, you're like, I've never flown out of Cherry Point, so how does this affect me? Well, the reality is, a lot of people, if you don't think we do the wands, right, you know the air traffic control tower. So you probably think that controllers are just in the tower. That's one part of what we do. So the control tower at Marine Corps Air Station Cherry Point works from the surface to 2,500 feet out to 5 miles. So they're basically working military aircraft and a few civilians. If you go on that flight that we're raffling off tonight, you might fly through that airspace. Other than that, you probably won't. So they're going to work aircraft really in and out of Cherry Point. The radar facility is going to cover an area of over 13,000 square miles. And it's basically all of Eastern North Carolina, from just north of Wilmington all the way up to the Virginia border. And every airplane that flies in that airspace is going to talk to Cherry Point Approach Control. And so it's a multifaceted thing, and you have controllers both in the control tower, which looks like that, and also you're going to have controllers in the radar room, which looks like that. So both facilities are going to come together to make sure that every flight in Eastern North Carolina is taken care of safely. So what does that look like? The same thing that we just talked about, but now we're going to talk about how we are able to make sure that the military in Eastern North Carolina is able to train and do what they need to do as a warfighter, and how civilian aircraft are able to both take off and land at New Bern Airport, up at Dare County in Manteo, out at Hatteras, out at Ocracoke, at Morehead City, and how we keep those airplanes separate, because that's a big job of what happens at Cherry Point Air Traffic Control. So the next things we're going to talk about is specifically what do we do in Eastern North Carolina to keep aviation safe and as the title of the show is, to keep them separated. How does that work? So let's talk about that a little bit. So this is Cherry Point's airspace. You can see on the map, if you kind of look at it from a landmark perspective, basically just south of the middle of that map is Cherry Point, and it goes literally from the bottom just north of Wilmington up over New River. We control New River's airspace as well, up over Camp Lejeune, over Cherry Point, up to the Outer Banks, almost to Kinston, and all the way up to the Virginia line up in Dare County. So everybody that flies in there is going to be talking to Cherry Point approach. That is going to happen from the surface all the way up to 23,000 feet all day, every day. And every day from 06 in the morning until about 12:30 in the afternoon, that airspace can go all the way up to 50,000 feet for military operations. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in depth as we go through these slides. But everybody that flies in that airspace, we encourage to talk to Cherry Point approach. Now, they don't all have to. You could go get in a private airplane, take off from New Bern or Moorhead or anywhere in the Outer Banks and fly around and not talk to air traffic control, but that wouldn't be a great idea because of the volume of military operations that we have going on in this area. So we encourage everybody to talk to us, because not only is that airspace assigned to Cherry Point approach, but it's broken down. You see all those lines on the map? It's a lot of lines on the map. Those are 38 different pieces of special use airspace that can be broken up for military use and training, and we don't want civilian aviators to be in those areas. We want to keep them separate for the participants of military training. So that's a big part of our job, and I'm going to show you a little bit of how that job works. So here are those special use airspace areas, and they're broken down into different pieces of airspace. So we have restricted areas where you can't go. If you see the red on that map, that is a restricted area. You can't go in there if you're the flying public. The only way to go in there is if you are a military aviator, you have a mission number, you're going to carry out training in that airspace, and we're going to make sure that you belong in there. You go in there, and we make sure everybody else stays out. That way, the military aviators can take care of their training needs in those areas. The yellow areas and some of the areas in blue are MOAs, so military operating areas. Now, sometimes you can fly in there as a VFR pilot, but we try to keep those areas contained for the military, so again, they can carry out those operations. The great thing about Cherry Point is, and this is something that we hear about a lot actually at the air traffic control facility, it's one of our biggest points of pride, is we only turn those areas on when the military needs to train. And when they don't, when they're done, we turn them off and turn them back over to the flying public so they can fly in those areas. And we're very, very proactive about that. So we make sure that if you're a guy down east and you have a farm and you want to crop dust, you are able to get in there and do that. If you want to take a flight over the Outer Banks and sightsee, you're able to do that. Especially if you're coming in and out of New Bern, Moorhead City, Dare County, the main airports we have in the region, we're going to route you. If those military areas are not active, we're going to make sure you get the quickest way in and out of those areas, because we want to be good stewards of this airspace, not only for the military, but also for the flying public. And so that's a big part of what happens in Eastern North Carolina. And it hopefully you get a warm and fuzzy as you're sitting here that when you fly around here, we're going to take good care of you. But also that the military is going to get their training. Speaking of that military training, this is a big part of what we're doing right now. So if you've been on the flight line at Cherry Point or looked around the air when you're driving around Eastern North Carolina, you have seen that we are starting to transition from the Harrier to the F-35. And that F-35 needs more space to train. We want to be able to train those pilots in real world scenarios. And so we have really expanded our airspace, and we've been expanding that airspace since 2015. And we've done that to allow for both larger area of military training and higher altitude of military training. So every day up until 12:30, you're able to train as a military aviator basically from the surface up to 50,000 feet over basically all of Eastern North Carolina. Now what we're going to do is we're going to really stratify that area so that civilians still get to do what they need to do and the military still gets to train where they need to train. But these are some of the opportunities that our military aviators have to train all the way up to 50,000 feet, to do aerial refueling, to do aerial combat maneuvers, to work offshore, to work onshore, and to give a realistic training environment for our aviators. And we do that all while making sure that our civilian aviation community is able to transition in and out of Eastern North Carolina. And so that's really a big thing that we've been working on at Cherry Point over the last 10 years. So, the other facilities that border our air traffic control environment here in Cherry Point, I told you it was a big area, over 13,000 square miles. So, if you look at this map, up to the north, we actually butt right up to Oceana Approach up in Virginia, or Norfolk Tower, which is an FAA facility up in Virginia. Washington Center, an FAA facility up in Virginia. Seymour Johnson Air Force Base out in Goldsboro. Wilmington Approach down in Wilmington. That's an FAA facility that does the approach control for Wilmington Airport. And then out offshore, the naval air traffic controllers handle that whole area offshore, and we abut them as well. And then above us, over the whole airspace, like I told you earlier, is Washington Center. So that's a lot of airspace to manage. It's a lot of flights to manage, and it's a lot of different kinds of airspace to manage. And our job as civilian air traffic controllers at Cherry Point is to really train the next generation of air traffic controllers on doing this job, to making sure you as the flying public and our military aviators are safe and get the training that they need. So how do we do that? If you look at this slide right here, this is actually a picture of our scopes at Cherry Point. Every single one of them allows us to control air traffic, but we can also turn all of them into training assets. So we can use those scopes to run simulations, scenarios, where we become the pilots as air traffic control instructors, and the students get to sit on real time and practice their air traffic control skills on the same scope that they'll be working on to sequence and separate airplanes. So that's a big thing, a big reason that I'm here at Cherry Point, because I love training Marine controllers. It's kind of a pain in the butt sometimes. My students are always 18 to 24 years old. If you know 18 to 24-year-olds, you know that they always think they know what they're doing all the time. They don't. I have a 17-year-old. He's right in that window. He thinks he's right about everything. He's not. But they're also so curious and so ready to learn, and it's amazing that we get to train these young people to do such an impactful job, and a job that sets them up for their future. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit more as we talk about our air traffic control training and the sectors that they train on at Cherry Point. So to take a Marine air traffic controller, day one, they come in, they go to an aviation schoolhouse in Pensacola, and they come to us and they know nothing. Usually we have to kind of weed out a little bit of what they learned in the schoolhouse and get them into training what we're actually going to do in air traffic control. But it takes them about a year just to get their feet underneath them. And it takes them more than 4 years to train and qualify as certified air traffic controllers. So you're looking at the span of a college degree program in order to learn how to be an air traffic controller. And each one of these different sectors that we're going to talk about, they have to train on every single one of them. So it's not like you come to Cherry Point and you get a textbook and you learn that textbook, you take some tests, and suddenly you're an air traffic controller. You have to learn and train on every single position we're going to talk about, And those positions can take up to a year for each position to train and qualify air traffic controllers on. So it's a big job, and we take it very seriously. The first one is the biggest one, and this is our en route sector. So we talked about earlier that air traffic control is broken up into 3 different sections: the tower, the radar approach, and the en route section. At Cherry Point, we actually have all 3, which is actually really rare. In the Navy and Marine Corps, there's only 2 facilities that have all 3 that they can offer air traffic controllers. That's Marine Corps Air Station Cherry Point and Marine Corps Air Station Yuma. Sorry, Navy, you don't have any. But we do all 3 phases. So we do the tower, we do approach control, and we do en route control. Our en route control at Cherry Point is our biggest sector. It covers our entire airspace and basically covers from 15,000 feet up to 50,000 feet. So anybody flying in that sector is going to be talking to a single controller. That controller is 9 times out of 10 going to be training a Marine air traffic controller to learn how to work the airplanes in that sector. The next one is the east side sector. So everything on the east side of our airspace, to include Marine Corps Air Station Cherry Point, New River, the Outer Banks, all the way up to Dare County, the Dare County Range Complex on our F-314, working F-18s out of Oceano, working F-15s out of Seymour Johnson, all of that is going to fall on the east side controller. But he's working a middle portion of airspace. So basically from 3,000 feet up to 15,000 feet, all of those airplanes are going to be his responsibility. So you can start to see one controller isn't working everything. We break up the workload so that each controller is working a different piece of airspace. The next one is going to be our west side guys. If you've flown in and out of New Bern, this is you. If you've gone on that Breeze flight, that American Airlines flight, your captain has talked to a west side controller. They've probably talked to that 18 to 24-year-old Marine controller that's training on that position. Don't worry, we're watching them very carefully. But when you take off from New Bern, when you land in New Bern, they're talking to that air traffic controller. They're controlling the lower portion down to New River's airspace. They're controlling New Bern's airspace. They're controlling Plymouth. They're controlling Little Washington. So everything that's on the west side of the airspace, you have a controller that's taking care of that. And finally, the arrival sector. The arrival sector is going to be taking care of everything that's coming in and out of Cherry Point. So mostly military operations, but if you fly out of Michael J. Smith in Beaufort, you're going to be worked in and out of that military traffic. There's a lot of sequencing that goes on there, which is why we give that to one air traffic controller. Everybody in and out of Cherry Point and everybody in and out of Michael J. Smith. So what does that look like? This is a picture of the tower. We don't always use binos, but you can see it's a little foggy out, so he's using them today. It takes a team, and that's the biggest thing that I think everyone should understand about air traffic control is it's not one controller at a time. It's all the controllers working together to make sure that everyone is keeping everyone safe. Everybody has each other's back. It's a team environment all day, every day, and that's the way we train. In fact, we call it a radar or tower team concept. And those teams are really, really, really important because they make sure that everybody is doing their job and that if you're having an issue, there's somebody else to step in to take care of that. And so that's going on 24/7 in every air traffic control facility. How do we prepare to do this? So I mentioned air traffic control school. That's one tiny part of the puzzle. When air traffic controllers get to places like Marine Corps Air Station Cherry Point, they go through a testing and simulation program. So before they can ever get on a scope or get in the tower and talk to a live airplane, they go through about 30 different testing and evaluations. And they have to make it through those testing and evaluations in order to even talk to an airplane. And then once they do, they're on with a qualified controller until they're able to show that they can talk to airplanes, that they know the knowledge, that they can sequence and separate, that they can do it in a quick and expeditious manner, and they can get a sign-off for a check ride to be a actual air traffic controller. So it is a process. Everyone that comes in is going to be trained by somebody like me, somebody like all of my employees that work in our classrooms, that work in our simulators, and make sure that these Marines, and it's the same in the FAA, that the civilian air traffic controllers get the same training. This is a pretty neat slide. So this is actually a simulator that shows you what the air traffic control tower would look like. So this is not a real tower. This is a simulator. We have one at Cherry Point. It's in a very dark room. It's not up in the tower. But it has screens that literally look like the airfield at Cherry Point. Now here's the hard thing. At Cherry Point, it was really hard for us to figure out how to get this to work because we have 4 runways that all meet in the middle. I don't know who designed that in the 1940s, but somebody did. There's 4 runways that meet in the middle, which is a wild airspace or a wild runway design, 1. And then 2, we had Harriers that like to land and take off vertically. Well, the people that built this simulator were not prepared for Harriers or 4 runways that were all pointed at each other. So we really had to work with the designers of the software to make it work for Marine Corps Air Station Cherry Point. And after many years of pulling our hair out, in fact, there's one of our former supervisors here tonight. He's missing some of his hair, I think, because it took that to get those simulators really down to where we could use them to help the Marines. But they've gotten so good now that they're actually control towers that are being controlled off of cameras in a simulator like that, and they're controlling real aircraft off of it. So the technology has really come a long way. We can take Marine air traffic controllers now, start them in that simulator, begin their training process, and by the time they talk to a real airplane, they're very comfortable doing it because it has voice recognition software, it talks like a real pilot, it flies the actual speed, turning radiuses, climb and descent angles of those aircraft, so they understand what it's going to look like to deal with those aircraft in the tower, and so we can really give them a good training opportunity before they even talk to an airplane. Same thing as I talked about before in the radar section. We can really simulate exactly what's going to happen for those air traffic controllers in the radar room before they ever talk to an airplane, and we continue to do it through the training process. So they'll talk to live traffic, they'll come off, they'll get a debrief, they'll take a break, and then they'll get back onto these simulators, and we'll have air traffic controllers simulating that environment again so they can continue that training process. At the end of the day, this is what you're looking for. Don't take a picture of this. This is my actual credential. There's nothing. It's just my address. If you want to come to my house, come on. But this is what sets air traffic control apart, specifically in the Marine Corps and in the military from a lot of other military occupational specialties, is that when you become a certified air traffic controller in the Marine Corps, you are not certified simply through the Marine Corps, you're certified through the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration. So you hold the same credential as any air traffic controller anywhere. Whether you're working at Raleigh, Atlanta, Reagan National, it doesn't matter. That credential, when you finish that training process, even as an active duty Marine, you will hold that credential. And so it's a pretty amazing process that we're able to train Marine air traffic controllers to do that, and also to train them on the same level that our civilian air traffic controllers are being trained at. Now, how does that move over into the Marine Corps? Because we know every Marine is a rifleman. So every slide you're going to see through this portion of the show is going to be actually pictures taken from Marine air traffic controllers that are doing training or in real world environments. So Marine air traffic controllers train at the station to do everything we just talked about. But they're also training to go do things in the real world as Marines. So they want to be able to train to go downrange and facilitate Marine Corps operations. So that's the other part of being a Marine air traffic controller. And so as you can see, one of the big parts of that is Marine air traffic controllers attached to other units. They may be infantry units, they may be units from the MEU, they may be Marine Air Control Squadron units, but they're going to go in with Marine Corps units and set up airfields and make sure those airfields are able to operate safely and make sure aircraft are sequenced in and out of those areas safely. And so that's a big part of what they're training to do. This is just one part of it. So they'll come in with an infantry unit, they'll fast rip out of a helicopter, the infantry unit will set up a perimeter on an airfield, and then they will actually set up that airfield themselves and begin to run air traffic control operations there. So that's the rifleman part of being a Marine air traffic controller. Here they are, setting up a setup. This sucks, I'm not gonna lie to you. This is an AMP setup, so you're setting up an expeditionary airfield. None of these guys have packs on their back, so I don't know what they're doing. But normally you go in, you're carrying radios, you're carrying equipment to set up an airfield. You have to get a pace count, so you know how many paces dictate how many meters, feet, or yards you're setting up that airfield for. And you'll go in and set up that airfield, put out airfield lighting. You'll make sure that airfield is safe for aircraft to come in and land on, and then you'll begin to run air traffic control operations on. And so that's another thing that Marine air traffic controllers are going to be trained to do. That's their main mission outside of the air stations and the Marine Corps. This is just part of what they do. One is a Marine setting up airfield lighting on an airfield. The other one is a Marine setting up communications equipment to be able to communicate with aircraft and with other units, whether that be a ship for the MEU, whether that be other units that are in contact with Marines as they're forward deployed. There's kind of the whole thing. So this is a paved airfield, so you can see their training. But they have come in, they have set up that airfield, and now they are starting air traffic control operations to make sure that aircraft can be sequenced in and out safely. The second part of this is we actually have deployable gear that allow Marines to come into an airfield and do full radar operations, just like what we talked about for the civilian world. So they have a radar that can see the entire airspace. They have a radar that can help aircraft focus on just getting to the runway. They'll set those things up with a Humvee, with a shelter, and they'll actually work real-world air traffic control operations in a deployable environment and provide the exact same service that your aviators are getting here on the CONUS side. All right, this is my favorite part. I've been working on this project for 7 years. If you know anything about military projects that require construction, it takes a long time. If you've looked out on the airfield, you see there's a big tower that's coming up that's gonna be finished at some point, right? So this is the new air traffic control facility. So we have been operating out of the air traffic control facility we're in. The radar room has actually been in that building since the 1940s. So it's time for an upgrade, right? Now, the equipment has been upgraded multiple times. The latest one was in 2008. But the tower has been there since the 1990s. That doesn't seem very long, except for when you get hurricanes and then you get some water incursion into the tower, and then that's not a great thing, right? Secondly, the new tower is going to be twice as tall as the old one. So you can see it from Highway 70, you can see it from 101, and that's going to give us a much better vantage point to be able to sequence and separate aircraft. So we're very, very excited about this new air traffic control facility. We just did a site survey last week with NAVFAC. It's coming along beautifully. I got to stand up in the tower with a hard hat on. I can't wait to stand up there without a hard hat on. It's gonna be amazing. But the cool thing about this is it sets us up to do air traffic control for the future. So not only for our clients and customers now, but as we transition as the Marine Corps and as civil aviation from ground base to GPS navigation, as we transition from the Harrier into the F-35, as we have unmanned aerial systems come on board like the MQ-9, it allows us to be able to service those aircraft and make sure that they are able to transit our airspace, train, take off and land effectively and safely. And so we're really, really excited about this new air traffic control facility. It's going to almost double our availability to train air traffic controllers, both in the radar room and the tower. We're going to have a simulator in the tower. The tower is so big you can almost play basketball in there, which is going to be awesome. You can see for miles up in that tower. The radar facility is going to have dedicated training space to make sure that we can train air traffic controllers in every phase, from the classroom to simulation to on the floor and on the scope. And so it's just really going to set us up for the future and allow us to be able to give great service to those customers and those military aviators in Eastern North Carolina. So you've seen on the flight line, we have 2 F-35 squadrons. We're going to get more. That sound of freedom, I hope you like it, because it's going to continue. And so as air traffic controllers, we want to make sure that we're ready to take on that challenge of more airframes, that we're able to sequence and separate those airframes and set them up to be able to train. So that's the focus of that new air traffic control facility. That's the focus of training air traffic controllers, is to make sure that not only can those military aviators get their training, but we're able to provide that and also separate them from everybody that likes to fly in our beautiful Eastern North Carolina skies. The next thing, if you were here last year, you heard an unmanned aerial systems talk, and so that is the future, right? We have unmanned aerial systems on Cherry Point right now. That is the MQ-9. It operates on Cherry Point. And I do have to say that as an air traffic controller, it's been a little bit difficult, because the FAA is kind of, I don't know what we're going to do. I don't know what we're going to do. I don't know what to do with my hands. That's a Talladega Nights reference if you don't know. But we hadn't decided exactly how we were going to work unmanned aerial systems in with manned aerial systems. And thank goodness our voices at Cherry Point and many others in air traffic control continue to discuss with the FAA the possibility of, hey, if we're using wonderful technology on these aircraft, let's just treat them like normal airplanes, because that's really the easiest way to do this. And so thank goodness we have been able to put some things in place with our airspace design and also with our airfield to have these unmanned aerial systems and to be able to treat them like real airplanes. So we're able to mix them in with F-35s, with Harriers, with C-130s, in our patterns, in our training areas, and we're able to get good training for those aviators as well. So that is the future. I know it's the future because I get at least 3 or 4 phone calls every day that I'm working about an unmanned aerial systems operator that wants to operate somewhere in Eastern North Carolina that they have to have clearance to operate in, so they call me. But it's wonderful to see, because we are literally equipping the system to be able to handle these aircraft, because we know that they're only going to get more robust in the future, and it's actually worked out great. Our aviators on Cherry Point with the MQ-9 at VMUT2 have been fantastic. We have been able to sequence them in with Harriers, F-35s, C-130s, F-15s, F-18s, and it has been no issue. And thank goodness the FAA has come around to allowing us to control those like regular airplanes. And then if they're small UAS, operating outside of the runway environment or outside of the tower environment, we kind of sanitize that airspace that they're working in, and they're able to do what they need to do as well. So it's a new thing in airspace, it's a new thing in air traffic control, but it is one that is definitely growing, and we're accounting for it, and it's actually working out well to be able to integrate both of those systems into the national airspace system. So the really big takeaway is we want to let all of these different components operate in the national airspace system and do what they need to do to train, do what you want to do to get to go see your grandkids or your kids over in Florida or in California, to make sure that the private pilot gets to fly up and down the beach and see the beauty of the Outer Banks, to make sure that the military aircraft get to have their training, the C-130 guys get to fly, 35s get to refuel off of them, and everybody gets to do it, and we keep them all separated. That's the keep them separated mantra. Additionally, we are going to have more airplanes to keep separated. You see this little guy. These are extremely small UASs that we're going to also have integrated into the airspace. So it's even more important that air traffic controllers are able to make sure that everybody has their own space to operate in as we continue to shift this environment in aviation. This is a picture that I love. It's old school meets new school. So the guy on the right, you see that gray hair, that bald spot? He has been working air traffic control for almost 40 years. And when he started, you see that beautiful thing that they're looking at, that didn't exist. He had to separate airplanes just looking out the windows of the tower and clearing them to land or take off. We've moved into a radar environment. We've moved into a GPS environment. Now we even have things like ADS-B where we can see aircraft all the way down to about 100 feet. And so as we continue to move into the future, it's amazing to see one generation pass to the next, to see one bit of service pass to the next, and to be able to see how this environment and this airspace is able to adapt and make sure that everybody gets to use it as the flying public and the military to carry out exactly what they need to do. So at the end of the day, what we want to do is keep those airplanes separated, keep you safe, keep those aviators training, and make sure that everybody gets to use this beautiful Eastern North Carolina airspace to make Eastern North Carolina a better place. Thank you guys for having me this evening. I hope you learned something from this presentation. You are welcome to ask me any questions that you'd like to after, and cue the music. Thank y'all.
Don't get on yet. Well, I don't know about you, but I'll tell you what, I'm really happy he's training our young guys, because if they come out anywhere near the way he is right now, we're all going to be safer in the sky. And we've got a few things we'd like to give him for taking his time and preparing and all. And this one is just a small certificate. It says, in appreciation for your presentation at our 2026 ECAF Gala, which enriched our event and inspired all in attendance, one student scholarship to the Eastern North Carolina Summer Engineering Camp will be awarded in his name. And we thank you. And then we have a couple of small things that are actually for him, but I don't know who wrapped this thing, but you didn't train him. That one is a copy of the flyer for the program, and he can put that on his wall or give it to Darby or whatever you want to do with it. And thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
And then just in case,